Chloe sat me down, which she runs like the Alpha X stuff. She sat me down and she was like, okay, so what are you passionate about? And I looked her in the eyes and I was like, I don't know. So that was probably one of like the scariest moments of my shadow day, was being asked what I like to do. And they had us do an ikigai. It was like stuff you care about, that the world needs, and like stuff that you love. I probably sat there staring at that paper for a while.
Yeah, you had never really been asked this,
yeah,
right? Isn't that a crazy thing to think that, you're 14 years old at this point, and you had never really been given that exercise of like, what do you love to do?
I didn't know who I was. I was just like this robot that would wake up, go to school, play tennis, eat, sleep. I went home and I cried to my mom. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me. Oh, my life like changed after that. It was amazing.
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by Mackenzie Price. Mackenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
These are always my favorite episodes because this is when we get to really pull back the curtain on what I believe is the future of education. The future of education is our students. We have the coolest students. I absolutely love it. One of the things I always say is kids are limitless, and it's a school's job to help unlock their potential by building an environment where they can really soar. And today we have one of our students here. Aheli is here, and Aheli is in her second year at Alpha. She joined us mid-year last year and has already made pretty huge splashes in so many different ways. So I'm really excited to welcome you, Aheli, to Future of Education. Thanks for being here with me.
Of course.
So tell us a little bit about you and maybe how you arrived at Alpha, what your background is. But you're a freshman. We'll start there, right?
Yeah. I came to Alpha in February of last year. I came from traditional school.
As an eighth grader, you came in.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
And the reason I switched from traditional school to Alpha was it was just so confusing and it was horrible. I hated it so much.
You hated your old school.
Yes.
Why?
It was, the teachers were they weren't teaching. I wasn't learning. There was no like, oh, I learned something in school today. There was none of that. I just felt like I was going to school, doing the same process, the same schedule over and over again. And it was, I didn't
so
like
repetitive.
it.
Yeah, so boring. Now, let me ask you this. Were you a good student at your old school?
I would say I was a pretty good student. I mean, my grades were good. If I struggled, I would ask for help. Mm-hmm. And the help usually wouldn't come because the teachers wouldn't help. They didn't do a good job of helping.
Now, tell me why that is, because in general, I think teachers have such a hard job. I believe that they are just overwhelmed with trying to deal with multiple students who are all at very different levels and all of that. But it sounds like to me you have a little bit more of a personal just challenge that you had with the teachers you were working with. Tell me more.
So I was in geometry and I was really struggling with that because I was like, oh, why did I do algebra over the summer and just try to like get through it really quickly.
Okay, hold on a second, Aheli. So you just told me a couple things that give me a little more insight into who you are. You decided to take algebra during the summer before 8th grade because you were wanting to get ahead. So you're obviously a student who's kind of a high achiever, someone who's doing that. So you took algebra over the summer and that put you in geometry for your 8th grade year. Okay, tell me about your geometry teacher.
Okay, he was an amazing teacher, by the way, but it was just so hard for him to like keep up with everything. And then I went to him for tutoring and I was like, can you please help me? And then there's like a room full of algebra kids that need help. And I'm just like, so I sat there for 30 minutes in the morning one day and I was just sitting there and I was like, okay, can you help me with my question? And he's like, 1 second. And he went to go help the algebra kids again. So
so you were dealing with a geometry teacher who he was having to tutor multiple students in multiple subjects. This is such a great example of just the challenge of what I believe is wrong with traditional education. These are a bunch of kids who are relying on one subject matter expert to give them tutoring at different subjects. And so kids are just standing kind of waiting for help. It was almost like I got my hand raised and I'm waiting until they can finally get there. This is interesting because we'll probably pick this up later. So yeah, you had a challenge in geometry as an example.
Yeah. he was a great, like, he was an amazing teacher. He didn't do anything wrong.
When he
It's
was
just,
able to focus,
yeah,
he was really great at it.
yeah,
He couldn't be replicated. There was not enough of him to go around, it sounds
yeah.
like.
And the other issue was he was the only geometry teacher in the entire middle school. Like, there was multiple algebra teachers. There's 2 teachers for basically everything except for geometry and algebra 2. But I was like, wow, there's only one geometry. Who else can I go to if he's busy? And I realized there's nobody else. It's just him. And if he was busy, then I had to figure it out by myself. And that was also kind of a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's so challenging about the traditional school environment is I don't believe students are given much agency. They really are beholden to the teacher to give them knowledge or help them
Yeah.
when they're challenged or needing extra help. And as a result, kids are just kind of like they're passengers sitting on the train waiting for someone to come in and help them. Okay, that's interesting. So you didn't love school. You didn't like that experience about that, but you were a good student when it came to grades, and you were willing to try to put in the extra time and effort to get help. You showed up at office hours.
Yeah.
You were trying to get the extra tutoring. What was good about your old school? What did you like?
I mean, the social aspect of it.
Social
Like,
aspect, of course.
I love to talk to people. I had a really big friend group. There was a lot of us. There was at least like 12 of us, which is a big number for me. And I just really like that part. But then there's also, I get to sit in class and I get to, sit next to my friend and I can write down notes as the teacher's talking like they do in movies.
Yeah, of course.
And I like that part. But then it would also, it'd be kind of challenging sometimes when no one else is behaving and it's just you. But I feel like I really like the social aspect of
Okay, so the
school.
social aspect, I think that's a really important point because I actually do think the highlight for a lot of students in our country is the social part. You've got friends that are there. So it sounds like your experience was pretty typical of a lot of students in our country. What inspired you to move to Alpha? And you did this in the middle of the school year. What happened?
Okay, so I think I just got really pushed over the edge. I had a history teacher, so much work. She was like 3-page, like it was double-sided, so it was actually 6 pages of homework. She would give it to us Wednesday, it was due Friday. You had to finish it. I didn't like that. And then we had STAR testing coming up, and as 8th graders, we had to take 4 STAR tests, I think. And I didn't like that. And then there was a bunch of other things. I just felt that my friends were kind of drifting away. And I felt like I was getting depressed, kind of. Not like really bad depression, but I started to find myself just in like this horrible trance of just wake up, I go to school. And then I was finally like, you know what? I want to go to Alpha. I feel like I will have so many amazing opportunities there that I just need to take this leap. And it's good to take risks. Like that was probably one of the biggest risks that I've ever taken.
Yeah. And how did your parents feel about the experience you were having? Because the school that you went to is considered one of the very best middle schools in a phenomenal school district when it comes to public education. How did your parents feel like your experience at your old school was going?
They knew. I mean, we would sit down during dinner and I tell like these like stupid stories about kids doing these things in class, and they'd be like, wow, this is horrible. I mean, what have you been learning?
So how did you find Alpha? How did you originally hear about it?
We had neighbors whose kids were there, and we were like, oh, this sounds pretty awesome. And I shadowed here during winter, I think, in January, and I really fell in love with that. I was like, wow, the kids in high school here, they're so mature and they seem so like put together, and I really like that atmosphere.
Okay, so the atmosphere felt different to you at Alpha than it did at your old school. Is that right?
Yes.
For those who don't know, a shadow day is a way that a potential student can come and experience a day at Alpha to see if it's something that they're interested in. It also gives Alpha a chance to have our guides get to know the student to understand, do we believe the student would be a good fit for the school? So that's what it is. It's basically the main part of our application process is come and experience a day at the school. So you came in the morning and you were able to just dive in and meet some other students. And what was the experience like for you?
So the shadow day was basically like I got there and Chris, head of high school, was there. And he's like, oh, it's so nice to meet you, welcome. And then there was a group of kids sitting at like these desks, and I was like, oh, hey, and they're really welcoming. And then we had launch where they told us how we're gonna start our day and what we should expect in the mornings and in the afternoons. And then we started our 2-hour learning, and they had me take some map screeners, and so they knew where my level was. And then we had lunch, and they're like, oh, do you want to come eat lunch with us? And they sat down and they taught me how to play like this card game. It was a lot of fun.
So the kids were friendly is what it sounds like. They were welcoming and inviting and open. That's wonderful. Okay. And then in the afternoon, you were able to experience what?
I was able to learn about what they do, and it was their passion projects or the Alpha X projects. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then Chloe sat me down, which she runs like the Alpha X stuff. She sat me down and she was like, okay, so what are you passionate about? And I looked her in the eyes and I was like, I don't know. So that was probably one of like the scariest moments of my shadow day, was being asked what I like to do. And they had us do an ikigai. It was like stuff you care about, stuff that the world needs, and like stuff that you love. I probably sat there staring at that paper for a while.
Yeah, you had never really been asked this.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that a crazy thing to think that, you're 14 years old at this point, and you had never really been given that exercise of like, what do you love to do?
Yeah.
What are you good at? What does the world need? And that's something that, for those that are listening, Chloe is our guide that leads the Alpha X project for the high school. And we did I have to say, I was very impressed with it, a 3-part podcast where Chloe walks us through what the experience is like for a high school student. Yeah. So you got a little taste of that project. How did it make you feel when Chloe asked you, what are you passionate about?
I was scared, honestly. I was like, she asked me what I'm passionate about? All I do is I go to school and I play tennis and I come home. I scroll on my phone and I go to sleep. What is there to be passionate about?
Wow. Crazy. Yeah. And so you really didn't feel like you were in touch with being able to answer that question truthfully.
I didn't know who I was. I was just like this robot that would wake up, go to school, play tennis, eat, sleep. I went home and I cried to my mom. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me. Oh, my life like changed after that. It was amazing.
I think that is a really sad observation to think about the way that traditional school rolls. It encourages kids to become robots, and it doesn't ask kids the question of what are they passionate, what are they engaged in.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Wow. That's a big wake-up call. Okay, great. So you moved into Alpha. What was that transition like? And just tell me what the experience has been like overall.
I joined mid-year, and it was like the last week of the session. So then they had break, and it was their week of test to pass, and it was hectic. And then I came, and I kind of was just like, hey guys. So I'd find someone, I'd follow them around for that day, see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. That was basically what my first week there was like. And they had me take all these placement tests. And then I took a 7th grade math test and I got like a 50. And I was like, ooh. Oh my God.
Yeah, because you were doing geometry as an 8th grader at your old school. You come to Alpha and you get 50% on a 7th grade placement test. Yeah. So you're realizing, okay, I don't quite have the mastery that I thought I maybe had. Yeah. How was that for you?
It was definitely hard because I strive to be a perfectionist. I want things to be like, I want to have good grades. I want to have, everything has to be good. It can't be bad or it can't be okay. It has to be great or amazing. And that was really shocking for me. And then they put me in 4th grade because I kept failing the test and going down. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay, so let me just step in to make sure that people are understanding what she's describing here. So even though you're an 8th grader at this point last year in your age grade, what Alpha does is try to figure out what do you actually have mastery knowledge of. And so, for example, in math, you had taken the 7th grade test, you got 50%, you went down to 6th grade, maybe you got a little higher, 5th grade, finally you're in 4th grade. And did you have good mastery understanding of 4th grade knowledge?
Yeah, it was, I think I failed the 7th grade test. Like, okay, we'll just put her all the way down because she doesn't need to waste her time failing more. But and then my guide, she was amazing. I loved her. She told me that this is how Alpha works. It helps you build a stronger foundation. And I love to work out. And I realized I made like the connection of, okay, everything just stopped working. And now I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back stronger. And that's what happened during like those, I think it was a couple of months, maybe 2 months. I worked really hard. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this done. And I went from 4th grade to 8th grade. And I was so proud of myself.
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting point that we have to understand is you're an 8th grader, you're going down into 4th grade material. People would say, "Oh my goodness, that means she's 4 years behind." And you were lacking in mastery knowledge 4 years behind in grade level, but in our system, it doesn't take 4 years to catch up. You can catch up in a period of 2 months. You received like a personalized learning plan that allowed you to go and fill holes in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. You finally get back up to 8th grade with 2 months of working. So was it frustrating for you at the beginning, or did you pretty quickly understand, like, here's the benefits of what I'm doing?
At first, it was really hard because all the other 7th and 8th graders were in like Algebra 1 or geometry, and I was in 4th grade, and they never really talked about how they got to algebra, and they were just, yeah, I'm in algebra. I'm like, okay. And then finally, once I got like close to them, they're like, yeah, it was really hard, and it was hard for me to wrap my mind around it too.
Yeah,
and then I realized,
because that is a very common experience for new students who come into Alpha. They're often behind where their grade level is, even A students. In fact, did you know this, Haley? We just found this out with a bunch of students who came to Alpha this year. We do assessments, and what we found is that students at their private schools, if they were an A student in their grade, in their subject.
Told me about this.
Yeah, if they were an A student on their transcript, that means they were anywhere from 1 year ahead to 3 years behind.
Yeah.
If they were a B student, they were between 3 and 7 years behind.
Oh, wow.
So these private schools are lying to parents and students about where they really are.
Oh, wow.
But then you were able to quickly go up in your mastery of math. Okay, so at the end of 8th grade, where did you end up? What subject were you back in?
I think it was towards like the end of the year, and I took the algebra test. I think I got like a 50.
Okay.
And then they put me in algebra, so I just started doing like the algebra skills. And then summer came, and I kept working through it a little bit. They gave me a summer plan for all of the other subjects I was behind in. And then when I got to high school, they put me in pre-algebra. And I was like, wait, but I passed that because that's basically 8th grade. And then I realized, okay, they're making me do the same thing. So I finished algebra. Well, I didn't finish pre-algebra all the way because they put us in SAT prep because we're going to take the SATs in December. So they put us in SAT prep, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay, wow. There's quite a bit of going. But you're you're going through the experience of filling in academic holes and learning to mastery. Do you think that approach is going to help you when you're doing, algebra 2 and geometry and pre-calc and calculus?
It's definitely gonna help me a lot. Like something from 4th grade can benefit you when you're doing pre-calculus.
It absolutely can.
It definitely can.
And it's also, I'm sure you're maybe already seeing this too, it's going to help with your SAT.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Now tell me about where you were with your other subjects when you came to Alpha. Had you been a good student at your traditional school in English?
English? Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then did you have holes in English when you came to Alpha?
Yeah, so at Alpha, it's like reading, and then we have like a separate like language thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in traditional school, it's just English, and you're like, okay, and then you write essays in English and you read books. But at Alpha, we do articles, and you read the articles and you answer the questions. That's called reading. And then in language, it's kind of just grammar and spelling and stuff like that. But it was the reading part that really got me, because I took a reading test. I was like, this reading test is so long. They're so long. And I got put in 6th grade reading. Oh my gosh, that was such a wake-up call for me too. All of this, like, being behind, it pushed me, and I love that so much because it really helped me get on my feet and work. And so I realized, okay, you know what? I'm in 6th grade reading. I can do this, because it happened in math. So I was cool with it this time. I was like, I can get back on level. And then I think it was just a couple weeks ago. I'm not really good at reading, but a couple weeks ago, I finally got to 8th grade, and now I'm 3/4 done with 8th grade reading, and I should be done by next week. So
wonderful.
And then for language, I was like, you know what? This is easy. Like, I get this. So that wasn't really an issue, and I was in 8th grade for that.
Amazing. There's a saying that ignorance is bliss. And I think a lot of students in traditional school are living in bliss because they don't realize what their real knowledge level is. They just kind of go with the flow, and they are in whatever grade they're in age-wise. And when it's time to move to the next grade, they move to the next grade, whether they know or not. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think ignorance is bliss, or do you think it's better to actually know?
It's bliss until you stop ignoring it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like once you realize that you've just been like cruising, and then you realize like, oh, I tried to do this and I couldn't do it. That's when it really starts to hit you, and that's what alpha does, and I love that.
Oh, good.
That wraps up part 1 of this episode, but don't worry, there's a part 2 coming soon. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it, so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with Mackenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back in your feed soon, but until then, remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to unlock their potential.